Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive.
Hello.
We are jumping straight into the deep end today. There's a debate that's just, it's lighting up rugby chats everywhere.
Oh, it's a big one.
It really is. The ultimate search for the coaching GOAT. The greatest of all time.
Yeah.
But we're not just, throwing names around. We're looking at a very specific, very bold claim.
A huge claim
Oh,
about Rassie Erasmus.
exactly. And honestly, it feels like we're living through a pretty pivotal moment in the sport's history right now.
We really are. We're watching a potential dynasty being built that could redefine how we measure coaching greatness forever.
The person who really kicked this all off is David Flatman, former England prop, Bath legend.
And a very sharp pundit now.
One of the best. He was on the Hits Different show with Danny Kerr, and he dropped a take that, well, at first it sounds a bit premature.
A little bit, yeah.
But when you actually dig into his logic, it's incredibly hard to argue with. He thinks Rassie Erasmus might already be the greatest coach to ever do it.
And the context for this is just massive. We're all looking ahead to the 2027 Rugby World Cup.
Right.
And South Africa, they're aiming to be the first nation in history to win 3 in a row.
The three-peat. It would be completely unprecedented.
Totally uncharted territory. So Danny Kerr asked the question, if they pull that off, is Rassie the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world?
And Flatman's response.
Didn't even hesitate. He said, if that happens, the history books just won't lie. But then, and this is the really interesting part, he took it a step further.
He didn't wait for 2027.
No, he suggested Erasmus might already be on that throne. Or at the very least, he's done enough to pip the other main contender.
Okay, before we get into the why of all this, and I really want to dig into the arguments about lazy DNA and the psychology of losing, which I think will surprise people.
That's the key part.
It is. But first, can I just ask you, listening to do something really quick for us, if you want to keep getting these detailed breakdowns, if you love obsessing over the game with us, please just hit that subscribe button for Rugby Obsession right now.
It genuinely helps us keep making these. It really does.
It does. Okay, so let's set up the big fight, the heavyweight matchup.
Right.
You can't have a JD conversation without talking about the other guy in the ring. If Rassie is the challenger, then the reigning champ has to be Sir Steve Hansen.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you just look at the resume. Hansen is the gold standard. He was an assistant for the All Blacks 2011 World Cup win.
And then head coach for 2015.
And that 2015 team.
My word, people still say that might be the single greatest rugby team ever put together.
Okay, so here's where I want to push back a bit, just to play devil's advocate. Hansen didn't just win, he completely dominated. The win percentage was insane, something like 87%.
It was absurd, yeah.
So how does Flatman justify putting Erasmus above a guy who made winning look, well, inevitable? And that's the absolute core of the argument. Flatman doesn't disrespect Hansen's record at all. He's very clear Hansen is right there in the conversation.
Of course.
But he brings in this other variable. You could call it the degree of difficulty.
The inheritance factor.
Exactly. When Steve Hansen got the top job, he was basically handed the keys to a Ferrari that was already sitting on the podium.
Right. They were already world champions. They had the system, the players, the confidence.
Everything. No, don't get me wrong. Keeping that Ferrari on the track at top speed is a massive skill in itself.
Oh, for sure. Complacency is a killer.
And Hansen was brilliant at fighting that off, but he wasn't building the car from scratch.
No. And that's the big contrast, isn't it?
Right.
Look at what Rassie Erasmus walked into in 2018.
I mean, the source material calls it a disastrous run under Alistair Coetzee.
Yeah.
South African rugby wasn't just losing, they were losing their soul.
I remember that time so clearly. 2016, 2017, they were dark days for the Springboks. Record losses, tactics all over the place. The whole aura was just gone.
And that's precisely why Flatman argues Erasmus pips him. Rassie didn't just maintain a dynasty. He resurrected a fallen giant from the dead.
He came in, ripped up the playbook.
Unified the team, and in 18 months, he took them from a global laughingstock to world champions in 2019.
So Flatman's point is that the journey, that vertical climb from rock bottom to the very top, is just a greater coaching feat than maintaining dominance.
It's the turnaround story. It's like you said, the difference between managing a blue chip stock and building a unicorn startup out of a garage.
But there's a psychological layer here that Flatman mentioned, and I found this part fascinating. He talked about the burden of expectation.
Yes, this is where it gets really deep into sports psychology.
The pressure on Hansen's All Blacks versus the mindset of Rassie's Boks.
Flatman's point is that when you're the massive, overwhelming favorite, which the All Blacks were for almost that entire era, winning feels different. It's not pure joy, it's relief.
The pressure of just don't screw this up.
Precisely. He says that when the pressure is always on you to win, and you do, it might strangely diminish the achievement a tiny bit. You're just doing what everyone expected you to do.
Whereas for Erasmus, especially in 2019, every big win was a defiance of the odds.
Right. So because the All Blacks were expected to be perfect, their actual perfection was somehow discounted.
It sounds harsh when you say it like that.
It is a bit harsh, but think about it from a fan's perspective. The narrative is always more compelling for the underdog, for the team that fights back. Flatman thinks that struggle adds real weight to Erasmus's legacy.
And this leads right into what I think is the most critical point Flatman makes.
How they handle defeat.
Wearing defeat. That's the phrase he used.
Yes, and this is a real tactical insight. Flatman is convinced that South Africa wears defeat a lot better than New Zealand does.
And hold on, isn't the hallmark of a champion that they absolutely hate losing? That they can't accept it?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But Flatman argues the opposite, that the All Blacks' inability to process a loss has actually become their Achilles heel.
How so?
Because for so long, the standard was total invincibility. So one loss becomes a national crisis. It creates panic, it creates doubt, hesitation.
A single loss for the All Blacks feels like the sky is falling.
Right. Now, contrast that with the Springboks under Rassie. Flatman says they don't mind losing the odd game.
Which sounds crazy.
Well, he's careful to clarify. Of course they're competitors. They want to win every match. But they don't see a loss in, say, the Rugby Championship as a terminal failure. They see it as data.
So if they lose a game to Australia, the All Blacks might have a public inquiry, but Rassie Erasmus just goes back to the lab and takes notes.
That's basically the argument. Flatman says, I think they don't mind losing the odd game between major campaigns as long as they learn from it. This makes them so dangerous in a tournament setting.
They're anti-fragile.
Perfect word for it. They take a punch, they figure out why it landed, and they fix the weakness. They don't carry that emotional hangover that the All Blacks seem to get when their armor is dented.
That is such a massive advantage for tournament play. It lets you experiment.
Exactly.
If you're terrified of losing a single test, you play your best 15 every single week, you run your stars into the ground. But if you can wear defeat, you can try new combinations, rest key players, build proper depth.
Which is exactly what Rassie has done. He uses the whole 4-year cycle to build a squad where every position has a world-class option. He could never do that if he was paralyzed by the fear of losing a random test match in July.
This feels like a good moment to just jump in and say, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the psychology of winning and how maybe losing is part of the secret,
we'd love for you to join us.
make sure you are subscribed to Rugby Obsession. We really try to find these angles that you don't always get in the mainstream coverage.
We really appreciate everyone who tunes in.
Now let's talk about the players, because you can have the best psychology in the world, but if you don't have the talent on the field,
You're not winning anything, no.
there's always this narrative about South African rugby, isn't there? The DNA argument.
The stereotype, yeah.
If you ask a casual fan to describe Springbok DNA, they'll say, massive humans, pure physicality, kicking, and just bashing people.
The flat track bully idea. And look, to be fair, Flatman says that's based in some reality. He says there is a proper South African DNA. There are a lot of huge men in that country. You can't ignore the genetics.
Physics is physics.
Yeah.
If you have bigger guys, you use them. Makes sense.
But this is where Flatman says the analysis gets, and I quote, lazy. People see the size of the box and they just assume that's the whole story.
They think the game plan is just run straight and smash.
Exactly. And Flatman argues that what Erasmus has done is completely evolve that DNA.
So it's not just about size anymore.
No. It's physicality plus intellect. It's aggression plus invention. He points out that this Springbok team is absolutely full of creativity, full of new ideas. They aren't just winning the collisions, they're outthinking teams.
And he used some brilliant examples to prove this, which I loved because they directly challenged that giant stereotype. He brought up Faf de Klerk.
The perfect counterexample. Flatman calls Faf a little bloke. And in a land of giants, he is.
But he also says he is so aggressive, so powerful.
Right, and people will say, oh, but Faf just box kicks.
That's the criticism you always hear.
And that's the lazy analysis Flatman is talking about. If you actually watch Faf, his aggression is tactical. His shooter defense, where he flies out of the line, it creates pure chaos.
He harasses the other 9.
He completely disrupts them. Rassie Erasmus took a player who does not fit the physical mold of a classic Springbok, and he weaponized his personality.
He turned a little bloke into a defensive missile.
That's a great way to put it. And he mentions Kobus Reinach, too. Again, not a big unit like the forwards, but he has that aggression and that incredible speed. Erasmus has built this synthesis. You have the massive forwards doing the brutal work, but then you have these tactical weapons who bring speed, invention, and total unpredictability.
So the case for Rassie being the Jouet isn't just that he wins trophies.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's that he's evolved the entire rugby identity of a nation. He took the old thug stereotype and gave it a PhD in modern tactics.
He kept the scary part. The physical threat is still everywhere, but he made it adaptable. He made it smart. Flatman says you have to deal with the physical threat everywhere, but there's so much creativity and invention.
And that balance is what makes them so suffocating to play against. You can't just man up anymore.
You have to outthink them, too. And very, very few teams can do both of those things at the same time.
Which brings us all the way back to the verdict, the title belt.
Yeah.
Flatman seems totally convinced if Rassie wins the 3rd World Cup in 2027.
The debate is over. Undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. That's the quote. And, I mean, statistically, how could you possibly argue with that?
3 in a row would be untouchable.
With him as the architect of all of it, yeah. Untouchable.
But he really leans into the idea that he might already be there.
He literally asks the question, is he already? I would say, yeah. And I think for him, it all comes back to the respect for the difficulty of a job. He sees the disastrous run before 2018. He sees the tactical evolution. He sees the mental strength to wear defeat. He sees the complete package.
It's just so interesting because we usually wait for a coach's career to be over before we have these conversations.
Right, we wait for the retrospective.
But Rassie's still right in the middle of it. He's still building.
And that's the terrifying part for every other team in the world, isn't it? 2027 is still years away. This squad isn't getting old. They're bringing in new talent. The machine is constantly being upgraded. If Flatman thinks he's the GOAT now, imagine the conversation if they actually do it.
It would be, I don't know, like Ferguson at Man United or Belichick with the Patriots. It just transcends the sport. But I have to ask you, and I want to ask everyone listening to this too, is there a bit of recency bias here?
That's always the risk.
Are we forgetting just how good Hansen was? Because his dominance was maybe a bit boring.
It's a fair question. The comeback story is always more exciting than the competent man continues to succeed story. But I think Flatman's point about the innovation holds up. Hansen perfected an existing system. Erasmus seems to have invented a whole new way of managing a national team.
Squad mentality, the bomb squad, the split coaching roles.
Exactly. He's changed the metagame. He's changed the very structure of how you run an international rugby program. And historically, the true Jotes are the ones who change how the game is played or managed, not just the ones with the most trophies.
So, Rassie Erasmus, the man who made South Africa okay with losing so they could learn how to win everything that matters. It's a hell of a case.
It is. It's very hard to bet against him. And like Flatman said, the history books don't lie. We're just watching the ink dry on the pages as we speak.
Look, regardless of where you stand on this, Team Hansen, Team Rassie, maybe you think Graham Henry belongs in there. You just have to admit it's a privilege to watch this level of strategy unfold in real time.
Absolutely. And to hear pundits like Flatman and Kerr break it down with so much respect, it just shows how special this era really is.
So we want to hear from you. This is Rugby Obsession. We want your obsessed takes. Is Rassie the GOAT? Is Flatman right? Does he pip Hansen already? Or is the turnaround story just carrying too much weight?
Let us know.
Drop your thoughts in the comments. We do read them, and we might even give you a shout out in our next deep dive.
I have a feeling the All Blacks fans might have a few thoughts on this one.
Oh, I'm counting on it. We love the debate. That's what this is all about.
For sure.
And before we sign off, just one last time. If you enjoyed this, if you want to stay ahead of the curve, please subscribe to Rugby Obsession. We're building a community of people who just love this game, and we'd love for you to be part of it.
Please join us for the next one.
Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.